Sergeant Emily Carter's boots struck the concrete of the base in a rapid, rhythmic cadence, echoing against the steel-gray buildings. The sun had barely risen over the horizon, casting long shadows across the neatly trimmed grounds. Usually, she was the first to arrive, a model of discipline and punctuality in the eyes of every soldier she worked with. But today, her timing was off, and with each hurried step, she felt the knot in her stomach tighten. The formation had already started. By now, everyone would have noticed her absence. As she rounded the corner near the mess hall, Emily's chest heaved. Her uniform was perfectly pressed, yet slightly damp from the morning dew and the exertion of her run. Her sergeant's insignia glinted faintly under the sunlight, a reminder of the position she had earned through years of dedication. Emily had always taken pride in her appearance, knowing that attention to detail was a reflection of one's commitment to duty. But today, all of that seemed insignificant compared to the invisible burden she carried, and the story behind the delay no one could yet imagine. The formation was already in progress. Rows of soldiers stood at attention, boots aligned perfectly, eyes forward, faces unreadable. Some whispered softly among themselves, the tension in the air palpable. Emily's heart raced as she approached, catching sight of her commanding officer, Major Thompson, standing at the front with his hands behind his back. His gaze was sharp, scanning the formation with the precision of a hawk. He hadn't looked at her yet, but she knew the moment she stepped into view, his eyes would find her. And when they did, she could almost hear the silent questions forming. Why was she late? What excuse could justify this breach of discipline? Whispers began to circulate as Emily drew closer, a low murmur of speculation weaving through the ranks. "She's never late," one private muttered. "Something must have happened," said another, his voice tinged with curiosity and doubt. Soldiers exchanged glances, some shaking their heads, others frowning. Emily's reputation as a model soldier only heightened their anticipation. This wasn't just about being late. It was about breaking an unwritten rule, a code that defined every minute of life on the base. Yet, despite the murmurs and the judgments forming like clouds above her head, Emily held her composure. Her mind drifted briefly to the events that had led her here. The mission overseas had been grueling, a combination of planning, improvisation, and sheer courage. Emily and her unit had faced danger on a scale that few could comprehend, navigating hostile territory, rescuing wounded comrades under enemy fire, and making split-second decisions that weighed heavily on her conscience. Each decision had been calculated, each risk deliberate, and each act of bravery had left its mark on her, not just physically, but emotionally. The mission's toll had delayed her return to base, and now the cost was evident in the critical gazes awaiting her. Emily's gaze flicked toward the medal, pinned beneath her insignia, partially obscured by the morning light and her uniform's folds. It was a small, shining token of valor, yet it carried a story far larger than its size suggested. To those who saw it, it might appear as just another decoration. But to her, it symbolized every sleepless night, every risk she had taken, and every life she had fought to save. The irony gnawed at her. The very symbol of her courage might be mistaken for vanity if anyone noticed it prematurely. As she entered the formation, soldiers shifted slightly, their posture stiffening. Emily moved into position with her usual precision, standing at attention despite the tremor in her hands. The whispers died down, replaced by a thick, anticipatory silence. Major Thompson's gaze finally met hers, sharp and commanding. The silence seemed to stretch on forever, each second magnified by the collective tension of the unit. Emily's pulse hammered in her ears, yet she stood firm, knowing that whatever came next, she had already earned her place here, through courage, not timeliness. Private Jenkins, a young recruit with barely a year in service, whispered to his companion, "I can't believe she's late. Did you hear about what happened?" His companion shook his head. Curiosity piqued, as every soldier in the row leaned slightly forward, trying to catch any clue about the reason for her delay. Emily's late arrival had become more than a simple breach of protocol. It had become a story in itself, a mystery unfolding in real time before their very eyes. The sunlight caught the metal fully as Emily adjusted her stance, and for the first time, a glimmer of something extraordinary pierced the surface of ordinary morning routine. Though subtle, the reflection was enough to make the whispers falter. Soldiers' eyes widened as they noticed the tiny, shining decoration pinned to her chest. It was unusual for a medal to be visible during routine formations, and yet there it was, waiting to tell its story. Emily didn't speak, didn't offer explanations. She simply stood, letting the silence speak volumes. The commanding officer's expression remained unreadable, though his eyes lingered on the medal with a faint flicker of recognition. The tension in the formation intensified. Emily's presence, late as it was, now carried the weight of something far more important than punctuality. Every soldier in the ranks sensed it. Something extraordinary had occurred, something worthy of both admiration and awe. And yet, no one knew the full story. Emily inhaled deeply, shoulders squared, eyes forward. Her body bore the subtle exhaustion of a soldier who had faced death and survived, while her mind braced for the scrutiny and judgment of those who had only seen the surface. She had faced far greater challenges than this, and yet, standing here now, she understood that the weight of perception could be just as heavy as the weight of battle. She was about to reveal a truth that would silence doubt, inspire respect, and forever change the way her unit viewed her. As the formation continued in quiet tension, Emily's presence became a symbol of anticipation, a reminder that appearances could be deceiving. Soldiers whispered quietly among themselves, unsure whether to scold, admire, or question her. The stage was set for a revelation that would leave no one indifferent. Emily's hands, steady despite the morning's exertion, rested lightly at her sides, the medal gleaming faintly, a promise of the courage and sacrifice that had delayed her arrival. By the time Major Thompson finally stepped forward, the formation held its collective breath. All eyes were on Emily Carter, the soldier who had always been punctual, the soldier who was now late, yet somehow commanding more respect than anyone had anticipated. The moment was thick with suspense. Every soldier, from the newest recruit to the most seasoned veteran, sensed that the ordinary rules of discipline were about to collide with something far greater, heroism. And in that moment, the story of Sergeant Emily Carter, the late arrival with a medal on her chest, was just beginning to unfold. The morning sun climbed higher, casting harsh light across the neatly aligned rows of soldiers. Sergeant Emily Carter stood at attention, her boots planted firmly on the concrete, shoulders squared, yet inside, her mind raced with the events that had brought her to this point. The formation, a symbol of order and discipline, seemed suddenly like a stage set for judgment. Every pair of eyes was on her, scrutinizing, waiting. Some faces were hard and skeptical, brows furrowed. Others betrayed curiosity, leaning forward slightly, whispers humming like electric currents through the ranks. Emily's delay was not just unusual, it was almost unprecedented. She had built a reputation over the years as a soldier whose punctuality was as legendary as her courage. To be late was not simply a breach of protocol. It was almost a personal affront to the structure she had devoted her life to. The whispers started low, like distant murmurs at first, but grew louder as soldiers shifted uneasily in their boots. "Do you think she's sick?" One private whispered, voice tinged with incredulity. "She's never late. Something serious must have happened." Another replied, a flicker of doubt and worry in his tone. Emily's gaze remained forward, never flinching, though inside, a mixture of pride and anxiety churned. Pride, because she had just returned from a mission few could comprehend, an operation that had demanded more courage than most soldiers ever experienced. Anxiety, because she knew the story behind her delay could not yet be revealed. Timing and decorum in a formation were sacred, and she had to navigate the scrutiny without letting her emotions give her away. The commanding officer, Major Thompson, finally shifted his attention toward Emily. His eyes, sharp and discerning, scanned her with an intensity that seemed to penetrate her very being. The tension in the formation was palpable, a living thing that pressed against every soldier like a heavy, invisible weight. Emily could feel the collective judgment of her peers' expectation, irritation, skepticism, and a hint of fear. In the military, lateness was never a small issue. But she knew that what she carried on her chest, the small, shining medal barely visible beneath her insignia, was about to eclipse any concern about timeliness. The murmurs among the soldiers grew louder, even as some tried to suppress their curiosity. Private Jenkins, the young recruit from the previous day, exchanged nervous glances with the soldier beside him. "I can't imagine what could possibly make her late. She's perfect in every other way." His companion shrugged. "Maybe she finally slept in?" he muttered half-jokingly, though there was tension in his laugh. Emily's thoughts flickered to the mission that had delayed her. She remembered the explosions, the smoke, the chaos. She remembered dragging her wounded comrades to safety, guiding them through hostile territory while under constant threat. Every second of that mission had been a test of endurance, courage, and decision-making under life-or-death pressure. The medal she now wore was earned in that crucible, a testament to heroism that few would ever truly grasp. Yet none of that mattered to the soldiers standing before her right now. All they could see was her lateness, her perceived failure to adhere to the rigid standards of military discipline. The whispers continued, a low hum of judgment. Emily could feel their skepticism pressing against her, each glance and sideways stare a silent accusation. But she remained composed, letting the formation's rhythm guide her, standing taller with each passing second. Then came a shift in the atmosphere, a subtle glint caught in the sunlight. Emily's hands, steady but betraying a faint tremor, rested lightly at her sides. The medal on her chest shimmered, just enough to catch the eye of a few soldiers in the front row. For a fleeting moment, the whispers faltered, interrupted by curiosity and the faintest hint of awe. Soldiers blinked, unsure what they were seeing. Some leaned forward slightly, attempting to discern the object that broke the monotony of the morning formation. Major Thompson's eyes narrowed. He had not missed the shimmer. His gaze lingered, sharp and calculating. He recognized the faint glint immediately an honor, rare and significant, awarded for valor beyond ordinary duty. Yet he said nothing, maintaining the outward composure expected of a commanding officer. The formation remained in tense silence, every soldier waiting for what would come next. Emily felt the weight of the moment, but she did not flinch. Her mind replayed fragments of the mission, the fear, the adrenaline, the responsibility she bore for every life in her unit. She thought of Private Morales, injured and unable to walk, and how she had carried him on her back through mud and fire. She thought of the decision she had made to expose herself to enemy fire to save a squad, knowing the risk was immense. Every memory brought a swell of emotion, but also a quiet, disciplined determination. She had done what was necessary. That was all that mattered. Meanwhile, whispers had evolved into murmurs of speculation. Soldiers craned their necks, trying to catch a glimpse of the decoration Emily had brought to the formation, though few had noticed it yet. The tension was electric, a mixture of judgment and the stirrings of admiration. Even those who had initially scowled at her lateness began to sense that something extraordinary had occurred. Major Thompson finally stepped forward, his boots striking the concrete with authority. Every soldier in the formation felt the shift in energy as he approached. His eyes remained fixed on Emily, his face unreadable. Emily saluted, a crisp motion that demanded attention despite the circumstances. "Sergeant Carter," he said, voice steady and controlled, "explain your tardiness." The silence that followed was almost unbearable. Soldiers leaned in, straining to hear. Private Jenkins' whispered comment, "I wonder what you say," was swallowed by the tension that blanketed the formation. Emily inhaled deeply, her mind clearing, and began to speak, measured and composed. "Sir, I was delayed returning from a mission," she said, her voice calm yet resolute. "I completed all objectives and ensured the safety of my unit." The formation seemed to hold its collective breath. Whispers ceased, replaced by a charged anticipation. Soldiers exchanged glances, wondering what mission could justify such a breach of discipline. The air was thick with curiosity, suspicion, and the dawning realization that Emily's delay was unlike any they had ever encountered. Major Thompson's gaze flicked down toward the faint glimmer of the metal on her chest. Recognition flashed in his eyes, subtle yet unmistakable. Emily stood silent, letting the moment linger. The whispers paused, the soldiers' skepticism giving way to a rising sense of wonder. Whatever judgment they had been ready to deliver was now tempered by an unspoken question. What had she done? The tension in the formation reached its peak, a collective pause in time. Emily's heart pounded, not with fear of punishment, but with anticipation. She knew that once her story unfolded, every judgment, every whisper, every doubt would transform into respect and admiration. But for now, she remained composed, standing at attention, letting the silence speak for her, letting the metal on her chest hint at the extraordinary courage that had brought her here. And in that suspended moment, the soldiers of the unit realized that this morning would be unlike any other. Emily Carter's lateness was no longer a simple infraction. It was the prelude to a revelation that would redefine respect, bravery, and the meaning of heroism in their eyes. The silent judgment hung in the air, heavy and electric, awaiting the truth that only Emily could reveal. Major Thompson stepped closer, his polished boots striking the concrete with a precision that demanded silence. The formation seemed to shrink beneath the weight of his presence, every soldier instinctively standing taller, hearts pounding, as though the very air had thickened with expectation. His eyes, sharp and assessing, locked on to Sergeant Emily Carter, the soldier who had never faltered before, the one who now stood at attention despite being late. "Sergeant Carter," he said, voice calm but carrying an authority that made the soldiers flinch, "explain your tardiness." The words seemed simple, yet their gravity filled the space between them. Every soldier in the formation leaned forward, straining to hear, straining to judge, straining to understand what had brought their paragon of punctuality to this moment. Emily lifted her chin, her gaze unwavering, the faint glimmer of the metal beneath her insignia catching the early morning light. "Sir," she began, her voice steady, "I was delayed returning from a mission. Every objective was completed, and the safety of my team was ensured." Her words were measured, precise, but carried the weight of experience, bravery, and discipline honed over years of service. Whispers ran through the formation, soft and uneasy at first, then rising into murmurs of speculation. Soldiers exchanged glances, incredulous. "A mission?" One muttered. "Why wasn't she back earlier?" Another replied. The questions hung in the air, unanswered, as Emily's silence seemed to speak louder than any explanation could. Major Thompson's eyes narrowed. He knew the military's rules inside and out. Tardiness was unacceptable. But there was something in Emily's posture, something in the way she carried herself, that suggested this was not ordinary negligence. His gaze shifted downward, and he caught the faint reflection of light from the metal pinned to her chest. Recognition flickered in his eyes, a subtle but unmistakable acknowledgment of its significance. The formation's attention shifted, subtly at first, as a few soldiers noticed the glimmer as well. "Private Jenkins," young and impressionable, whispered to his companion, "Do you see that? Is that a medal?" His companion shook his head, eyes wide with curiosity. The whispers spread, soft and cautious, as soldiers tried to decipher the symbol shining on Emily's chest. For the first time that morning, the air of judgment began to mingle with something else, wonder. Major Thompson's voice broke the silence. "Sergeant Carter," he said, his tone still commanding, but with a hint of curiosity now lacing the words, "You realize the rules. Tardiness is a serious offense. The formation expects explanations beyond mere statements." His eyes searched hers, attempting to read any hint of deceit, any sign of negligence. But Emily remained steadfast, calm, and resolute. She straightened her posture, drawing herself taller, and in that simple motion, the medal caught the sunlight fully, a bright emblem of courage pinned above her heart. A collective murmur ran through the formation, curiosity transforming into disbelief. The medal was unmistakable, a rare commendation awarded for extraordinary bravery in combat. Soldiers who had only seen Emily as disciplined and efficient now glimpsed the hidden heroism behind the uniform. Major Thompson's expression shifted subtly. Recognition became understanding. Emily's calm demeanor masked the immense courage required to earn that medal. Courage beyond ordinary expectation. Courage that demanded risk, sacrifice, and resilience. The commanding officer's sharp gaze softened, tempered by respect. He realized that her delay had not been negligence, but consequence, the direct result of a mission that tested her limits beyond imagination. Emily's thoughts drifted briefly to the mission itself, vivid memories flashing behind her calm eyes. The team had been pinned down under hostile fire, explosions echoing around them like thunder. She had carried wounded soldiers to safety, navigated dangerous terrain, and made split-second decisions that determined the lives of her comrades. Every movement, every choice, had been deliberate and courageous. And now, standing before the formation, she bore the quiet, dignified acknowledgement of that valor in the form of a medal. The soldiers around her could sense the gravity of the moment. What had seemed a simple case of tardiness was now revealed to be a story of survival, heroism, and dedication beyond measure. The whispers had grown, but now they were tinged with admiration. Private Jenkins, eyes wide, whispered again, I think she saved lives. That's why she's late." His companion nodded slowly, realization dawning. Major Thompson's voice cut through the murmurs. "Sergeant Carter, I believe your actions speak louder than any explanation could. But the formation must know the full story." His tone carried authority, but also an unexpected softness, a recognition of courage that transcended routine discipline. The soldiers held their breath, realizing that they were about to witness a rare moment, the unveiling of true heroism in their midst. Emily allowed herself a brief, controlled inhale. She began to recount fragments of the mission, her words deliberate, precise, yet carrying the weight of lived experience. She spoke of smoke-filled corridors, of wounded comrades, of decisions made under relentless pressure. She recounted how she had risked her life to save others, and how every second had been a test of endurance, judgment, and courage. The soldiers listened, enraptured, the formation now completely silent. Every word painted a vivid picture of bravery and selflessness that could not be ignored. As she spoke, the medal gleamed brightly, catching the morning sun and drawing the eyes of every soldier. They watched her, spellbound, as if the emblem itself carried the narrative of her courage. Major Thompson observed the transformation unfolding, the shift in perception from criticism to admiration, and allowed a rare, approving nod. Emily's story, her valor, and the medal she bore had silenced judgment and replaced it with respect. The younger soldiers, previously ready to scoff or whisper in judgment, now stood in quiet awe. They were learning, perhaps for the first time, that appearances could be deceiving. Lateness, they realized, was trivial compared to courage. Emily's composure, her calm demeanor, and the subtle shine of the metal had conveyed a truth that no words alone could have achieved. By the time she finished recounting the mission's key moments, the atmosphere had completely transformed. Where skepticism and murmurs had dominated, now there was reverence. Soldiers straightened instinctively, heads held higher, inspired by her example. The formation was no longer simply an exercise in discipline. It had become a witness to heroism, a lesson in bravery and sacrifice that none present would forget. Major Thompson finally addressed the formation, his voice carrying authority and pride. Sergeant Carter has demonstrated the highest level of courage, commitment, and leadership. Her actions on that mission exemplify the best of what we expect from our soldiers. Today, she is not here to be reprimanded for a brief delay. She is here to be honored for service beyond measure. The words echoed through the formation, leaving no room for doubt or judgment. Emily stood quietly, absorbing the acknowledgement, her posture unwavering, yet her mind reflecting on the mission, the risks, and the lives saved. She allowed the medal to speak for her courage, letting every soldier understand that heroism often comes quietly, without fanfare, and that true dedication sometimes means arriving late, but with honor. The transformation in the formation was complete. What began as silent judgment had evolved into admiration and respect. Soldiers exchanged glances, nodding subtly, understanding at last the depth of Emily's courage. For some, it was a lesson in humility. For others, an inspiration. And for Emily, it was a confirmation that duty and valor were recognized not just in medals, but in the acknowledgement of those whose lives had been touched by her bravery. The stage was now set for the next revelation, the deeper stories behind the medal, and the emotional lessons that would unfold in the coming days. But for this moment, the silence, the awe, and the respect formed a powerful tableau, one that would linger in the memories of every soldier present. Sergeant Emily Carter, late to formation, had become a living testament to the fact that heroism often defies expectations, and that true courage shines brightest in moments of doubt. The sun glinted off the medal on Sergeant Emily Carter's chest, finally catching the attention of every soldier in the formation. What had been a faint shimmer in the morning light now shone like a signal of something extraordinary. Silence fell, thick and expectant, as the soldiers processed what they saw. Emily's uniform, once a symbol of discipline and order, now carried proof of bravery far beyond anything they could have imagined. The medal was unmistakable, a rare and prestigious commendation awarded for acts of heroism under life-threatening circumstances. Private Jenkins, the young recruit, blinked several times, unsure whether his eyes were deceiving him. "Is that?" he whispered to the soldier beside him, voice tinged with awe. His companion could only nod, eyes wide, realizing that Sergeant Carter's lateness was no minor infraction. It was the outward sign of an extraordinary story hidden beneath her calm exterior. Whispers ceased entirely as the soldiers collectively held their breath, waiting for confirmation that what they were seeing was real. Major Thompson stepped forward, his expression still composed, yet his eyes softened as he studied the medal. Recognition and respect mingled in his gaze. Emily Carter had achieved what few soldiers ever did, and in doing so, had changed the atmosphere of the formation from one of judgment to reverence. "Sergeant Carter," he said, voice steady yet filled with unspoken acknowledgement, "would you care to share the story behind this honor?" Emily inhaled, her shoulders squared, the weight of both her uniform and her experiences pressing upon her. "Sir," she began, voice calm yet carrying the resonance of someone who had faced danger head-on. "This medal was awarded for actions taken during a mission in hostile territory. My unit was under fire, and several of my comrades were injured. I ensured their evacuation and safety under conditions that tested every ounce of our training and courage." The formation listened intently, every soldier hanging on her words. The story she began to recount was not one of bravado or exaggeration, but a testament to selflessness and determination. She spoke of treacherous terrain, hostile enemy fire, and the split-second decisions that determined whether lives would be lost or saved. Each detail painted a vivid image of courage, of a soldier putting her team above herself, embodying the essence of duty. Soldiers who had moments earlier exchanged skeptical glances now found themselves leaning forward, absorbed by the narrative unfolding before them. The medal, gleaming in the sunlight, served as a tangible reminder of the risks Emily had faced, the sacrifices she had made, and the lives she had protected. Even the youngest recruits began to grasp the gravity of her actions, the kind of courage that could not be measured in words alone. Emily's voice remained steady, her demeanor composed, yet a quiet strength radiated from her. She spoke of Private Morales, injured and unable to move, and how she had carried him on her back through mud, rubble, and fire, all while under threat. She described the decisions that required exposure to danger, the mental calculations that ensured the team's survival. Every sentence was a window into the relentless responsibility she bore, the courage she summoned, and the lives that depended on her judgment. The formation was completely silent, the tension replaced with awe. Soldiers realized that the medal was not merely decorative, it was a symbol of the reality of combat, of bravery measured in moments that demanded more than ordinary courage. For many, it was an awakening. They had witnessed discipline, punctuality, and order every day, but this was something different. This was heroism, raw and undeniable, standing in their midst in the form of Sergeant Emily Carter. Major Thompson's expression conveyed approval and quiet pride. "Sergeant Carter," he said, "your actions exemplify the highest ideals of our service. You have not only upheld the standards of duty, but have redefined them through courage and sacrifice. This formation owes you more than an explanation. It owes you respect." His words resonated through the ranks, carrying authority, reverence, and acknowledgement. Emily nodded slightly, accepting the recognition with modesty. She did not speak of personal pride, nor did she seek attention for herself. The medal was not a trophy. It was a reminder of the lives saved, the teamwork, and the courage required to face danger without hesitation. Her colleagues, once ready to scold or judge, now saw the embodiment of bravery, and the lesson was unmistakable. Appearances can deceive, and true heroism often comes quietly, without fanfare. Soldiers began to murmur in admiration. Private Jenkins, still wide-eyed, whispered again to his companion, "I can't believe it." She carried them all through that. His companion could only nod, swallowing hard, feeling the weight of respect and awe settle over him. Others exchanged glances, recognizing the profound courage it took to act under such extreme circumstances. Emily had not simply been late. She had returned carrying the story of survival, leadership, and valor that would linger in the minds of everyone present. The medal seemed to shine even brighter now, a focal point for the formation's collective realization. It symbolized the extremes of human courage and the extraordinary lengths to which one individual could go to protect others. Emily's calm composure contrasted with the chaos of the mission she had survived, reinforcing the idea that true heroism was not loud or brash. It was quiet, deliberate, and grounded in duty. Major Thompson addressed the formation again, his voice carrying the weight of authority and genuine respect. "Let this serve as a reminder to all of us that discipline and heroism are not always visible in the way we expect. Sergeant Carter's actions demonstrate that courage often arrives in unexpected forms, and that integrity and valor are as vital as punctuality and procedure." As the words sank in, the atmosphere shifted completely. Soldiers who had been ready to criticize now stood taller, their previous judgments replaced with reverence and inspiration. Emily's story had transformed the formation, illustrating a lesson far deeper than any standard drill or command could teach. Courage, sacrifice, and resilience had become living examples before their very eyes. Emily allowed herself a brief, controlled exhale, feeling the tension ease. The formation, once a stage for judgment, had become a witness to heroism. Every soldier now understood that the lateness was not failure. It was the silent echo of bravery, earned in circumstances that few could fathom. The medal, once just a decoration, had become a beacon of inspiration, a symbol of the extraordinary courage that lay beneath the surface of the uniformed exterior. For the soldiers, the lesson was indelible. They had seen discipline challenged, judgments questioned, and heroism revealed. They had learned that appearances were deceptive, and that true courage often arrived in subtle, unexpected moments. The morning's formation, initially charged with tension and whispers of scorn, had transformed into a moment of awe and respect, one that would remain in the memory of every soldier present for years to come. Emily's modest nod, the medal gleaming against her uniform, and the collective realization of her bravery created a tableau that would be recounted countless times. The story of the late arrival, once a source of judgment, had now become a story of heroism, integrity, and courage. The formation had witnessed not just the reveal of a medal, but the revelation of the character behind it. In that moment, Sergeant Emily Carter stood not as a soldier who was late, but as a living testament to the idea that true valor cannot be measured by time alone. It is measured by action, sacrifice, and unwavering dedication to the lives of others. The formation, transformed by the revelation, understood that this was a story worth remembering, a story of courage, resilience, and inspiration that would linger far longer than any ordinary morning drill. The formation remained silent, every soldier frozen in a mixture of awe and anticipation. Sergeant Emily Carter allowed herself a subtle nod before beginning to speak, her voice calm, yet carrying the gravity of lived experience. She did not rush. Every word was deliberate, measured, and weighted with the reality of what had occurred. She began to recount the mission in detail, each moment painting a vivid picture of courage, sacrifice, and the relentless challenges faced by soldiers in combat. The mission had been in a hostile region overseas, a remote area where intelligence indicated high enemy activity. Emily and her unit had been tasked with securing a strategic point while simultaneously evacuating a team caught behind enemy lines. What should have been a standard operation quickly escalated into chaos as that convoy came under fire from multiple directions. Emily described the deafening blasts, the smoke and dust that filled the air, and the constant threat pressing from all sides. Several comrades had been injured in the initial ambush, including Private Morales, a young soldier who had barely completed basic training. Emily's voice remained steady as she described lifting him from the rubble, carrying him through uneven terrain while dodging enemy fire. She recalled the feeling of his weight, the strain on her muscles, and the focus required to maintain balance and speed under such extreme conditions. Every detail emphasized the enormity of the task, the kind of challenge that could break even the most seasoned soldier. As she spoke, soldiers in the formation leaned forward, captivated. The younger recruits, who had initially questioned her tardiness, began to grasp the stakes and the scale of her courage. Each anecdote of the mission revealed not only her bravery, but also her deep sense of responsibility. Emily recounted navigating minefields, avoiding sniper fire, and making instantaneous decisions that determined whether her team lived or died. The medal on her chest now seemed almost secondary, a symbol of the extraordinary decisions and sacrifices that had defined her mission. Private Jenkins, who had been quietly absorbing every word, whispered to his companion, She carried them all through that." His companion nodded slowly, eyes wide with a mixture of disbelief and admiration. Soldiers shifted in their ranks, murmuring quietly, recognizing the difference between routine discipline and the kind of courage Emily had displayed. The formation, once tense with judgment, now hummed with respect and awe. Emily continued, describing moments that tested her physically and mentally. She spoke of exhaustion so complete that every step felt like moving through lead, of fear that threatened to paralyze her, and of the weight of knowing that any mistake could cost lives. Yet despite the danger, she had remained composed, leading her unit with clarity and precision. The story revealed not just acts of heroism, but the inner fortitude required to face chaos with calmness and resolve. She also highlighted the teamwork that had made the mission possible. While her actions were courageous, Emily emphasized that every life saved had been a collaborative effort. Soldiers had relied on each other, made split-second decisions together, and covered one another under fire. The medal she now wore was a recognition of leadership and bravery, but also a testament to the resilience and cooperation of the entire team. Soldiers in the formation began to see the human side of the uniformed hero before them. Faces softened, eyes brightened, and whispers of respect grew louder. Some veterans in the unit nodded knowingly, recalling the dangers they themselves had faced and the rare bravery required to navigate them successfully. For the younger recruits, this was an education in courage, humility, and the reality of life in combat, lessons far beyond drills or manuals. Emily's narrative painted vivid mental images. Crawling through mud, carrying injured comrades on her back, navigating through enemy fire, and maintaining composure while making life or death decisions. Each detail underscored the courage, determination, and quick thinking that had earned her the medal. The soldiers listened, spellbound, understanding that her brief delay at formation was insignificant compared to the extraordinary feats she had accomplished. Major Thompson's expression softened further. He had seen medals, awards, and commendations before, but this was different. It was not just the recognition of bravery. It was the story, the life behind the medal, the demonstration of true leadership and sacrifice. Emily's words and her calm demeanor conveyed an authenticity that no paper or ceremony could replicate. The formation, once filled with whispers of judgment, now resonated with a collective respect for a soldier who had exceeded every expectation. Emily shared one of the most intense moments of the mission, the one that tested her courage to the utmost. A grenade had landed perilously close to her team while they were mid-evacuation. Emily had acted instinctively, shielding a fellow soldier, throwing herself into harm's way to absorb the blast. The pain, the shock, and the chaos had been immense, yet she had pushed forward, ensuring that everyone else made it to safety. This act, above all others, had solidified her eligibility for the prestigious medal. As she recounted these moments, the formation began to grasp the enormity of what had transpired. They saw a soldier who had faced fear head-on, who had prioritized others' lives above her own safety, and who had acted with integrity, courage, and calm precision under circumstances few could imagine. The medal on her chest became not just a decoration, but a symbol of endurance, sacrifice, and unwavering commitment. The younger soldiers, previously impatient or judgmental, now whispered among themselves with awe. "I don't think I could have done that," said one. "She's incredible," replied another. Even those who had initially been skeptical now nodded silently, understanding that punctuality was trivial compared to the magnitude of courage Emily had demonstrated. Emily concluded the story by emphasizing the teamwork, courage, and split-second decisions that had defined the mission. She made it clear that the medal represented not only her bravery, but the lives of her comrades, the cohesion of her unit, and the shared sacrifices that military service demanded. Her modesty, combined with the undeniable heroism behind her actions, left the formation in complete admiration. Major Thompson finally spoke, his voice carrying authority, pride, and respect. "Sergeant Carter, your courage exemplifies the highest standards of service. You have demonstrated what true leadership, bravery, and sacrifice look like. the formation, and the entire unit is fortunate to have you among us. His words were not only acknowledgment, but a formal declaration that the judgment of her tardiness had been replaced entirely by respect and inspiration. The soldiers responded, first with quiet nods, then with murmurs of appreciation, and finally with spontaneous applause that spread through the formation. Private Jenkins wiped a tear from his eye, overwhelmed by the enormity of what he had just witnessed. The medal on Emily's chest now symbolized more than a single mission. It had become a tangible representation of the courage, resilience, and humanity that defined the very best of military service. Emily allowed herself a brief exhale, feeling the tension ease. Her story had been heard, understood, and respected. The formation, once a forum for judgment, had been transformed into a space of learning, admiration, and inspiration. Soldiers had absorbed the lesson. Heroism is not always loud or visible. Sometimes it arrives quietly, behind the ordinary routines, in moments of extraordinary courage that define a lifetime. By the end of the day, Sergeant Emily Carter's mission, her bravery, and the medal she bore became a story that would echo through the unit for years. Soldiers spoke of it to recruits, veterans, and colleagues, using it as an example of courage, selflessness, and leadership. The story of the late arrival once, a cause for scorn, had transformed into a legendary tale of heroism, a reminder that appearances can deceive, and that true courage often arrives in unexpected forms. The sun had risen fully now, casting a warm light over the formation, but the soldiers' attention was entirely fixed on Sergeant Emily Carter. The medal gleamed brightly against her uniform, a tangible symbol of courage, sacrifice, and leadership that had earned every ounce of respect in the ranks. For those who had been quick to judge her lateness, the story she had told was more than an explanation. It was a revelation. Emily had not merely been delayed. She had returned bearing proof of bravery that none could question. Private Jenkins, young and impressionable, whispered to the soldier beside him, "I can't believe she did all that." Alone, his companion shook his head, eyes wide. "She wasn't alone," the other replied. "But she led. She carried them." These whispered observations reflected the dawning realization among the younger soldiers. Emily's heroism was not about the medal, it was about courage in action, leadership under fire, and the strength to prioritize others above oneself. The murmurs quickly spread through the formation, no longer laced with skepticism but admiration. Soldiers who had been ready to scowl, to criticize, or to whisper behind Emily's back now found themselves standing straighter, eyes wide with newfound respect. They began to understand a lesson that could not be taught through drills, regulations, or lectures. Courage often arrives quietly, in moments that demand more than ordinary strength. The medal was the proof, but the story behind it was the lesson. Major Thompson stepped forward once again, his expression a blend of authority and genuine pride. "This formation," he began, his voice echoing across the ranks, "has witnessed something extraordinary today. Sergeant Carter has exemplified courage, leadership, and dedication beyond what any of us could expect. Her actions remind us that the measure of a soldier is not always visible in routine drills, but in moments where lives and values are on the line." The soldiers responded with quiet nods, a ripple of acknowledgement moving through the ranks. The initial tension, born of judgment, had been replaced by admiration and reflection. They were beginning to internalize the lesson. Heroism is often unseen, humility is often silent, and leadership is most powerful when it protects and uplifts others without expectation of reward. Emily's composure, combined with the medal gleaming against her uniform, conveyed all of this without a single boastful word. Even the veterans, those who had long served and seen danger firsthand, exchanged glances of respect. They knew the medal represented an extraordinary act, one that went far beyond what most soldiers experienced in a lifetime of service. Emily's bravery under fire, her commitment to her comrades, and her calm decisiveness had transformed the way everyone perceived courage. The formation had witnessed a demonstration of leadership that no manual could convey, and no lecture could replicate. Private Jenkins finally found his voice, though it was barely above a whisper. I hope I can be like that someday," he admitted, glancing at Emily with reverence. Other young soldiers nodded, realizing that courage was not just a story or an ideal. It was something they could aspire to, something they could embody in their own ways. Emily's heroism had become a beacon of possibility, inspiring the next generation of soldiers to act with integrity, bravery, and selflessness. Emily remained quiet, letting the formation absorb the gravity of her story. She had shared enough for them to understand the stakes, the risks, and the courage required to act in those moments of crisis. The medal, a tangible acknowledgement of her bravery, had transformed from a symbol of achievement into a catalyst for inspiration. Every soldier in the ranks now understood that her actions went far beyond ordinary service. They represented the highest ideals of duty, honor, and sacrifice. The shift in atmosphere was palpable. Where once there had been judgment and skepticism, there was now respect and reflection. Soldiers whispered quietly among themselves, discussing what they had learned from Emily's story. Even the most hardened among them felt a change within, an understanding that courage often comes in subtle, unexpected ways, and that humility can coexist with extraordinary valor. Major Thompson observed this transformation with quiet satisfaction. He had seen the effect of Emily's story ripple through the formation, and he knew that this was a teaching moment that could never be replicated in a classroom. "Let this moment serve as a reminder," he said, his voice steady and authoritative, "that true leadership and courage are demonstrated in action, not in words." Sergeant Carter's story is now part of our unit's history, a lesson in bravery and selflessness that we will carry forward. The soldiers responded with renewed energy, a mixture of admiration, pride, and humility. Some approached Emily afterward, shaking her hand, expressing respect, and thanking her for her actions. Others simply observed quietly, absorbing the lessons silently, realizing that her heroism had touched them in ways that went far beyond the medal itself. Every interaction reinforced the understanding that courage, sacrifice, and leadership were qualities to be emulated, not just admired. Emily's story also fostered a sense of unity within the unit. Soldiers began to discuss how they could support one another better, how teamwork and vigilance could prevent mistakes, and how acts of courage, large or small, could make a difference. The mission she had completed and the medal she now wore became symbols of the collective responsibility each soldier shared toward one another. The formation, once a rigid and disciplined gathering, had evolved into a moment of reflection, learning, and inspiration. Even the quietest soldiers, those who rarely spoke or engaged, felt the weight of the story. They realized that heroism was not always loud or celebrated, and that the courage to act selflessly often came with no expectation of recognition. Emily had returned late, yes, but she had brought with her something infinitely more valuable, a lesson in courage, humility, and leadership that could not be ignored. As the formation concluded, soldiers stood taller, moved with purpose, and carried a new understanding of what it meant to be part of a team, a unit, and a community of service. Emily's calm presence, combined with the medal gleaming on her chest, had transformed the ordinary morning assembly into an extraordinary lesson in bravery, resilience, and integrity. Her story would not be forgotten. It would become part of the unit's collective memory, recounted to recruits and veterans alike as an example of what true courage looked like in action. For Emily, the acknowledgement and respect were humbling. She had not sought recognition, nor had she expected applause. But she understood the importance of sharing her story, of allowing her fellow soldiers to learn from her experiences. In that moment, she became not only a hero in action, but a teacher, guiding others toward understanding the true meaning of courage, sacrifice, and leadership. By the time the day ended, Emily's presence, her story, and the medal she bore had reshaped the unit. Soldiers discussed her heroism among themselves, inspired to be better, to act bravely, and to support one another in ways they had never considered before. The formation had become more than a gathering of discipline. It had become a living testament to the lessons of courage and humanity that Emily embodied. The transformation was complete. What began as judgment, suspicion, and whispers of criticism had evolved into admiration, respect, and inspiration. Sergeant Emily Carter, once late to formation and on the verge of scorn, now stood as a symbol of heroism, humility, and leadership. The medal on her chest was no longer just an award, it was a beacon of courage, illuminating the path for every soldier who had the privilege of witnessing her story. Days passed, but the impact of Sergeant Emily Carter's story lingered in every corner of the base. The medal on her chest was no longer just a symbol of a single act of bravery. It had become a catalyst for change, a spark that inspired soldiers to reevaluate what courage, leadership, and loyalty truly meant. Even routine drills and formations carried a new energy, a subtle shift in atmosphere that reflected the lessons learned from Emily's heroism. Private Jenkins, still awed by her actions, found himself repeating the story to anyone who would listen. At mess hall tables and during quiet moments in the barracks, he shared the details of Emily's mission, the courage under fire, the split-second decisions, and the selflessness that had defined her every action. Younger soldiers listened, wide-eyed, absorbing the lesson that heroism often arrived in unexpected forms, quietly and without fanfare. It wasn't just the recruits who were affected. Veterans, too, reflected on Emily's story, recalling moments in their own service when they had faced fear, responsibility, and life-or-death decisions. Some realized that they, too, could have acted differently, with more courage or leadership, and Emily's example became a benchmark for behavior, conduct, and commitment. Discussions during downtime shifted from mundane topics to reflections on bravery, teamwork, and personal responsibility. Major Thompson noticed the transformation firsthand. During inspections and briefings, he observed soldiers standing taller, moving with purpose, and treating one another with a renewed sense of respect and camaraderie. Emily's heroism had become more than a story. It had become part of the base culture, subtly reshaping expectations and inspiring a new standard of excellence. The ripple effect of her actions extended far beyond the medal itself, influencing attitudes, morale, and behavior throughout the unit. Emily herself remained humble, though she noticed the subtle changes. Soldiers would greet her with genuine warmth. Young recruits would nervously ask questions about her experiences, and even seasoned veterans sought her advice on strategy, leadership, and decision-making. She shared her insights with patience and clarity, emphasizing the importance of teamwork, vigilance, and courage, while consistently deflecting attention from her personal accolades. Her actions demonstrated that leadership was not about recognition, but about empowering others to excel, act bravely, and support one another in times of crisis. One afternoon, during a routine training exercise, Private Morales approached Emily. He had been the injured soldier she carried during the mission, and the medal on her chest still resonated deeply with him. "Sergeant," he said, voice steady but filled with emotion, "I don't think I'll ever forget what you did for me." "For all of us." Emily smiled softly, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "You made it through because you fought, and we all did it together," she replied. Her words reflected her belief that heroism was shared, not owned, and that courage was amplified by collaboration and mutual trust. The morale of the unit improved dramatically. Soldiers trained harder, not out of fear or obligation, but from genuine inspiration. The story of Emily's bravery became a reference point for behavior during drills, exercises, and real missions. Soldiers learned to trust one another more deeply, understanding that every action had the potential to save lives or prevent catastrophe. The lessons went beyond skill. They were lessons of character, of integrity, and of selflessness. Even outside formal training, Emily's story influenced the culture on the base. In the barracks, soldiers would discuss scenarios where courage and quick thinking mattered. In the mess hall, they debated tactics and decision-making under pressure, often citing Emily's mission as an example of exemplary conduct. Her presence had fostered a new sense of accountability, a realization that every soldier's actions could have profound consequences, and that leadership and bravery could emerge from unexpected circumstances. Major Thompson recognized the profound effect this single story had on his unit. During a leadership briefing, he praised Emily openly, not only for her courage, but for the way she had elevated the entire unit's performance and morale. "Sergeant Carter," he said, voice carrying authority and genuine pride, "you've shown us all what it means to act with integrity, courage, and selflessness. The influence of your actions is already shaping the next generation of soldiers here, and it will continue to inspire long after this day." Emily's humility never wavered. She reminded the soldiers that heroism was not about medals, recognition, or accolades. It was about making the right decisions under pressure, prioritizing the well-being of others, and acting with integrity, even when no one is watching. Her quiet guidance and mentorship became a cornerstone of the unit's culture, ensuring that the lessons of courage, teamwork, and responsibility endured beyond the initial story of her mission. The ripple effect extended to daily interactions. Soldiers became more attentive to each other's needs, more supportive during training, and more willing to step forward in challenging situations. The camaraderie of the unit strengthened, rooted in shared respect and the understanding that courage and leadership were qualities to be nurtured and emulated. Emily's story had transformed a routine military unit into a cohesive, inspired, and motivated team, prepared to face the challenges of both training and real missions with confidence and integrity. Private Jenkins, who had first been amazed by Emily's actions, took the lessons to heart. He began demonstrating leadership in small ways, mentoring newer recruits, assisting others during exercises, and striving to emulate the courage and composure he had witnessed in Emily. The story of Sergeant Carter became a personal guide, a standard against which he measured his own actions, and a source of inspiration that motivated him to grow into the kind of soldier capable of facing extreme challenges with calm determination. The impact of Emily's heroism even reached the community outside the base. Local civilians and visiting officials, upon hearing of her mission, recognized the extraordinary bravery and sacrifice involved. Emily's medal and story became emblematic of the commitment and courage inherent in the soldiers serving their country. While she never sought public attention, the narrative of her actions spread quietly, inspiring respect and admiration beyond the immediate unit. Months later, the formation revisited the story of Emily's mission during a formal ceremony. Soldiers, both new and experienced, were reminded of the lessons in courage, leadership, and teamwork that had emerged from a single late arrival. The medal on her chest, once a source of curiosity, had become a symbol of inspiration, a tangible reminder that heroism could emerge in any situation, and that integrity, bravery, and selflessness defined true leadership. Emily's influence, subtle yet profound, had transformed the unit. Soldiers understood that heroism was not measured in punctuality or minor infractions, but in the courage to act selflessly, the resilience to persevere under pressure, and the commitment to protect others above oneself. Her story, medal, and presence had reshaped the culture, ensuring that lessons of bravery, humility, and leadership would endure long after the initial event. The ripple effect continued to grow. Soldiers shared Emily's story with their peers, recruits, and fellow units, spreading the lesson of courage and integrity throughout the military community. Her heroism became part of the collective memory, an enduring example of the power of selflessness, leadership, and moral strength. By the end of this transformation, it was clear that Sergeant Emily Carter's late arrival to formation had been far more than a minor infraction. It had been the prelude to a lesson that touched hearts, inspired action, and elevated an entire unit. Her story, and the medals she bore, had created a legacy of courage, humility, and leadership that would resonate for years, shaping the values and actions of every soldier who had the privilege of witnessing her example. The morning sun rose slowly over the base, casting long shadows across the parade ground. Sergeant Emily Carter stood at attention once more, her uniform crisp, her medal gleaming prominently on her chest. Yet this time, the formation was different, not tense, not judgmental, but alive with quiet respect and reflection. Soldiers no longer focused on lateness or small infractions. Their attention was fixed on the example before them, a soldier who had risked everything for her comrades, who had acted with integrity, courage, and humility, and whose presence now embodied the highest ideals of service. Major Thompson surveyed the formation, his eyes resting briefly on Emily before moving across the ranks. The unit had changed. The lessons of her mission and the medal story had permeated every interaction, every drill, every quiet conversation among soldiers. Private Jenkins, standing near the front, reflected on the past weeks, realizing how much he had grown. Where he had once measured worth in punctuality and adherence to routine, he now understood that courage, selflessness, and leadership were the true measures of a soldier. Emily's influence had extended far beyond the immediate formation. Recruits whispered about her bravery during mess hall breaks. Veterans shared her story with peers, and the culture of the base had shifted subtly but profoundly. Soldiers carried a renewed sense of pride, not in personal accolades or recognition, but in the knowledge that each individual had the potential to act heroically, to protect, to lead, and to support those around them. The story of one late arrival had evolved into a living lesson in courage. As the formation moved through drills, the soldiers displayed a newfound attentiveness. They observed each other, worked more cohesively, and supported one another in ways previously unspoken. Emily, walking among them, offered quiet guidance, a nod of encouragement, or a subtle adjustment in posture or technique. Her mentorship, calm and deliberate, reinforced the lesson that leadership was not about authority alone. It was about nurturing, teaching, and inspiring others to act with integrity and bravery. Later, in the barracks, soldiers gathered quietly, discussing the story of Emily's mission with renewed energy. Private Morales, the soldier she had carried through enemy fire, spoke first. "I don't know if I'll ever match what she did," he admitted. But Emily, seated calmly nearby, smiled and replied, "It's not about matching what I did. It's about finding courage when it counts, about helping each other and trusting your training. That's what makes the difference." Her words resonated deeply, reinforcing that heroism was a series of choices, small and large, made under pressure. Even Major Thompson reflected on the changes. He had seen countless soldiers come and go, witnessed training exercises, and awarded medals before, yet nothing had compared to the way Emily's story had transformed the unit. He realized that leadership was as much about teaching values and inspiring others as it was about enforcing discipline. Emily had become a living lesson, one whose influence would endure far beyond single formation or medal ceremony. As the day progressed, the soldiers' respect for Emily deepened. She remained humble, never allowing her medal to overshadow the contributions of others. She emphasized that the success of any mission depended on teamwork, preparation, and the courage to act decisively. Her calm demeanor and quiet strength had created an atmosphere where soldiers felt empowered to lead, to take initiative, and to prioritize the welfare of their comrades above self-interest. The base itself seemed transformed. During training exercises, soldiers worked more cohesively, anticipating each other's needs and risks. In moments of high pressure, they remembered Emily's story, the calculated decisions, the sacrifices, the acts of bravery, and found inspiration to act decisively. The lessons she imparted extended beyond tactical skill. They touched character, integrity, and the moral courage to make the right choice even when it came at personal cost. Even the youngest recruits began to internalize the lesson. They saw in Emily a model of what a soldier could become, not measured by medals alone, but by the quality of action under pressure, the courage to prioritize others, and the humility to act without expectation of recognition. Private Jenkins often reflected on this, recalling Emily's words and the gleam of her medal, understanding that true heroism was not about accolades, but about the lives touched, the risks mitigated, and the legacy left behind. Emily also encouraged soldiers to share their experiences and lessons learned. She emphasized that storytelling, reflection, and acknowledgement of courage, both large and small, were essential to building a strong unit. Soldiers began recounting their own moments of bravery, small acts of kindness, and critical decisions during training. This practice not only strengthened bonds, but also reinforced the culture Emily had inspired, one where courage, integrity, and mutual support were celebrated, nurtured, and emulated. Weeks later, during a formal ceremony, the unit formally recognized the lessons inspired by Emily's heroism. Major Thompson addressed the soldiers, praising not only her bravery, but the transformation that had taken place across the base. "Sergeant Carter," he said, "you have shown us that heroism is measured not in hours, rules, or medals alone, but in the courage to act selflessly, the integrity to lead, and the humility to serve. Your example has elevated this entire unit, and your legacy will endure." Emily accepted the acknowledgement quietly, her eyes reflecting a mixture of pride and modesty. She knew that the true measure of success was not in recognition, but in the lasting impact on her comrades. Each soldier who carried forward the lessons of courage, teamwork, and humility was a testament to the enduring power of one person's actions to inspire and transform. By the end of her service, Emily's story had become legendary within the unit. New soldiers arrived already aware of her heroism, and the culture she helped foster ensured that courage, integrity, and selflessness were core values for every member of the team. The medal on her chest, once a symbol of a single mission, had become an enduring emblem of the ideals she embodied. Years later, veterans would recount the tale of Sergeant Emily Carter's late arrival to formation. They spoke not of tardiness, but of courage, leadership, and the profound lessons learned from a soldier who had risked everything for her comrades. Her story became a touchstone for discussions on bravery, humility, and responsibility, and the medal she had earned became symbolic of the quiet, selfless heroism that defines true leadership. In the quiet moments of reflection, Emily herself considered the journey. She knew that her actions had been ordinary in the context of duty, yet extraordinary in impact. The medal recognized a single mission, but the true legacy lay in the ripple effect her courage created. The soldiers inspired, the unit strengthened, and the culture transformed. She understood that heroism was not about recognition, but about action, integrity, and the quiet impact on the lives of others. As the formation concluded, soldiers dispersed, carrying with them lessons of courage, teamwork, and humility. The base continued its routines, yet beneath the ordinary drills, the invisible influence of Emily's heroism persisted. She had turned what could have been a moment of judgment, a late arrival, into a defining lesson in leadership, courage, and the enduring power of selflessness. And in that final, quiet moment, as sunlight glinted off her medal, Sergeant Emily Carter smiled softly. She had arrived late to formation, but she had also arrived at something far greater, the hearts, minds, and respect of every soldier who had the privilege to witness her courage. Her story would endure, long after she had gone, as a testament to the power of integrity, bravery, and quiet heroism.